Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. Hey Sister, how are you doing?
Hey, sister, doing well. I was happy that today was a productive but lazy day. How
All
about yourself?
right. Hey, I would say the same. I looked up and I was like, wait a minute. It's time for us to get ready to go live tonight.
Yeah.
And we are so excited to welcome our very special guest tonight, one of our beautiful sorors, beautiful inside and out, and really mostly just in spirit as a human being. I shared that with her before we came on, so we're not gonna have no tears over that, okay? Sarah Amanda Wilson. Hey, Amanda, how you doing this evening?
Yay! Hey, sisters, doing well. Doing well. I too had a pretty good day with my teenager. We did a makeup class today.
Oh, okay, okay, all right, very
So it
nice.
was a perfect day to do our makeup class because I'll be on today.
Fantastic. Well, we have one of our super fans who's already tuned in, Jody. Hey, Jody, how are you? We're so happy to have you tuned in with us tonight. Now, we're going to switch it up tonight because, normally in typical Hey Sister fashion, we start off with some hot topics, but we were like, these hot topics are not even worth talking about tonight
It's
because the
not
world
even
is
that hot.
they're not even that hot. They are not that hot. There's a lot of trauma informed behavior that's happening out here in the world right now. And so, what we will say to you all, we know that May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and May has passed us, but it's never not a good day to get you some mental health. Okay. And Amanda, since you are by training a mental health counselor, if you would just for a moment just talk about the importance of mental health, and then that'll start like tee us up into to your story and why you're here today.
Sure. So important. We are just experiencing so much, not just on our hot topics, but in society as a whole. We are hurt. We have been through so much just in the last couple years alone. I know we are going to talk about some grief and loss today for my specific situation, but we have had so much loss as a people. I know many people that I know have lost someone in the last couple of years. We're all grieving and hurt, and it's okay to seek help for it's very important for us to be mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually sound and stable and healthy. And that's why we're hurt people, because hurt people. And so if we don't get ourselves stable and healthy, which starts here, I'm a firm believer in your mind. Your mind is the center of control for you. You can talk yourself into things. Y'all know you can talk yourself into something, and you can talk yourself out of something. Your mind is so powerful. So feed it good things, and positive things, and what you believe. Your beliefs become what you say. What you're thinking becomes what you're saying. What you're saying becomes what you're doing, and what you do starts becoming habits. So get the good thoughts, the positive thoughts, and that's mental health is important. Get help if you need it. And quite frankly, I think everybody needs it, like we all could use some therapy, some good support system. And now if you're afraid of therapy, get a coach. Get it's all support. Get a support group. It's all very helpful for your mental well-being.
Absolutely. Well, you said something so powerful there about our mind is a center of control. See, we like to think our emotions are these invisible things that we have no control over, but that is not true because as long as you have a
Mhm.
functioning human brain, you can gain
Mhm.
back control over your life. We have some shouts
Absolutely.
out to you. Say we love
Aw.
you, Amanda. Love you, sis. So
Thank
we
you.
got
That's
some
so
folks
sweet.
already tuning in, and so we want to ask that you, hey, go ahead, like this episode, share it with someone, text your friend and say, hey, here's the link, join us tonight, and join the conversation in the comments. That's where we have our most hearty dialogue, comes from the conversation in the comments
Yep.
as we talk with one another tonight on Hey Sister. Now, you are not new to Hey Sister, because we did a special episode, HBCU episode a few
Mhm.
years ago. So you're
Yep.
not new to this. So we want you to sit back and relax.
I've never
And
been by myself though. We were kind of, on a panel. I'm feeling a little bit in the hot seat, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, we're going to relax and get into it, but we want to talk about your love story. So on Friday, it marked the 1 year anniversary of the transition of your husband Ike,
Mhm.
who, like I said, you two just, if anybody was watching, we're a phenomenal couple.
Thank
And
you.
so I want you to share with us about your love story, about you and Ike, how you came to be.
How we came to be. Well, our love story is my favorite. So we met in graduate school at Troy University, getting our master's in counseling and psychology. And we met in our very first class. And of course, Ike was the center of attention anywhere. And he loved to get reactions out of people. So he would just say silly things. And go against the grain because he wanted everyone to be, reacting, and he loved a good argument. So that was him in our very first class. So very first class, very first day, we, started chatting, and we decided, I think it was the first day, if not the first day, had to be like the second day, that we had to partner up for projects. And we realized that we both worked the same profession. So we both were child protective investigators with the Department of Children and Family, but we didn't know each other at work because we worked in two different counties. So it's interesting because people who then knew us at work to be a married couple thought that we hooked up at work, but we actually met at school. And so we thought, and as a child protective investigator, if anybody knows anything about working with DCF as a CPI, your hours are crazy. And we both were crazy enough to do this graduate program where you were there all night Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. That was the graduate program because we couldn't, we were professionals. So we're like, if we're going to do a project, we definitely can't do it with regular 9 to 5 people because we're going to be meeting all outside of crazy hours. And we understood, like, I could get called out to a case at any point and I might be a shaky partner, So we're like, we gotta be partners because we understand one another's schedule already. So that was that. And then after our first class, we were like, hey, you want to take, which classes are you taking next? So we agreed we were going to take our classes together. Our next classes were, we tried to get through them as quickly as possible. Our next classes were offered in Leesburg, not even in Winter Park, because we were going to a Winter Park campus. I was like, I don't know where Leesburg is. What is that? He's like, don't worry, just follow me, So I would just follow him to class, we'd meet up and I'd follow him. And so our relationship just grew from being graduate buddies in grad college. And it's so weird because it just naturally grew out of our friendship. And my friends tease me to this day because they're like watching this relationship bloom. And I'm like, he's just my friend. He's my grad school friend, I'm like, no. And then one day he like proposes to me. They're like, okay, so you go from friends to getting married, And I'm like, Ike and I used to just be like, it's just so easy. Our relationship was so easy and just like we naturally grew together. So, I mean, oftentimes he'd be like, oh, why do people say relationships are so hard? Like it's super easy. We definitely got to our hard parts. Don't worry, it got there. But, like we grew quickly. In the beginning, we met in 2006. We got engaged in 2008 and then got married in 2009. And that year, getting married, we were planning our wedding. We bought our house, this house that I'm sitting in now. established our foundation. We had Amaya first, and then had Isiah, our son, next. And that's that. We got married in 2009. And yeah, our, that's one thing that when you say till death do you part, I'm so grateful that he truly had, his eternal love.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, hearing that orientation, lets people know about how special he was as well, and how special you two were together. So one of the things we wanted to then get into
Wait,
was
let me tell you about how he proposed to me, because I did mention
okay.
the
Come on,
he,
tell us, girl. We
he
got to know.
broke up with me when I told you about he likes to get reactions. He broke up with me and was like, it was at the end of our grad school, so 2 years later, right, about 2008. And it was like stressful time, so it was a little bit tense, and we were a little bit stressed out, and kind of, we, even when we disagreed or would argue or whatever, it was never too big. It was just disagreeing. And so he's like, oh, we're all stressed out and tense. Let's do something this weekend after our finals. And I'm like, okay. He's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, let's just go play basketball, because I'm like athletic. And he's like, no, we're not going to go play basketball. I'm like, well, you asked me what I want to do. So then he planned this whole nice evening where we went to this restaurant. It was Cafe Tutu Tango. We had never been there, and so we went to like that for our first time. And he did all this whole thing where we did for our first times, right? And then he took me to, and I didn't realize we started talking about all the things and our first blah blah blah. And so he took me to the place where we first had kind of like our first date. It was a park near our grad school. And he's like, oh man, we missed the exit home. You want to just go to the park? I'm like, okay. So we started walking around. So we're at the first place we first met. He's like, oh yeah, times are just too rough right now, and it's so tense. Like, I know we're meant to be together forever, but here, it's just not now. We need a break for now. And then he broke up with me and gave me a promise ring. He's like, here, take this promise ring. I'm like, are you kidding me? We're not in high school. I'm not taking a promise ring. I was so mad. I was crying, like, take me home right now. So he's like, okay. We had to stop at his house because I dropped my car at his house, and we went, rode in his car together. And then when I got to his house, he's like, oh, I was like, let me go get my stuff out of your house. So we go upstairs to his third-story apartment, and then it was all like roses everywhere, and cake and flowers and champagne. And I'm like so confused. And then he actually pulls out a real ring and proposes. I'm like, is he kidding me? After I'm like crying, devastated the whole way home. Like, who does that? So yes, that was Ike in a nutshell. He just had to like be totally different and do things like that. So yes, that was us in our life. And that's pretty much how life was. Like, he would just have to get me aroused and just,
Sister, what you think about that? How would you have handled that?
you would have been like, no, I'm not marrying you.
Well, I mean, at least it sounds like at least he came through at the end. I mean, he didn't, and it didn't linger. Like, he didn't let you go home and then decide to try to plan it the next
True.
day. At least it was all in the span of a
The
few
brother
hours.
had a plan.
He had a plan. I like it. I like
He
it.
did.
Definitely memorable.
Definitely. Like, yeah, definitely. And then I had two pretty rings, so I was like, okay.
So you got engaged in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
married soon after, started
Mm-hmm.
your family,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of midway in here,
Mm-hmm.
boom, you get this diagnosis. And at first it was like, tell us what
Yeah.
was happening, what was going on. Because
Yeah.
Ike was very athletic, very
Mm-hmm.
active. He was
Mm-hmm.
very involved as a coach and in youth
Mm-hmm.
sports and stuff like that, very well known around the community. So
Mm-hmm.
when he started not just feeling so good, what was
Mm-hmm.
happening?
Yeah. So in 2007, I'll go back a little bit because we were together at that time. Before we got married, he would be feeling, in so much pain. He'd be doubled over in pain. And we would, we were getting trying to figure out what was going on with him. He would be bleeding and stuff. And I'm like, something's wrong. And, and we would go everywhere and, nobody could figure out anything. And I'm like, you're not supposed to be feeling this way. Like something's wrong. So finally they found a tumor in his stomach, took it out. And it was said to be, benign, which it was at the time, and things were okay. So he would have to get it checked every, so often after 2007. So he started to feel bad again around 2013 and getting pain again. And again, we were going through doctor after doctor after doctor. And no, can't find anything, don't know what's going on. And it's same thing, he would be to where he would have blood in his stool and things like that. And it's like, something's not right. And finally, a GI doctor found in his liver that, because they started to find all kinds of, oh, we think you have gallstones. Oh, we think you have this, that. And so finally, they diagnosed him in 2014. So the kids were, my son was just 3 and Amaya 5. And so it essentially, came from his stomach and metastasized to his liver. And so in 2014, there were they removed 14 tumors from his liver, but couldn't remove all of them because of where they were placed. Sometimes you can't take it all out. So since 2014, he, just kind of battled treatment after treatment. Their initial guidance was to, resect and take the tumors out of his liver because of how much they have spread. And so from there, just, treatment after treatment. He never wanted to do chemotherapy from the beginning because he, felt like chemo just kind of killed all of your cells, not just your bad ones. So we tried every single therapy other than chemotherapy. In the very end, we finally had to resort to the chemo, but he did everything else, targeted radiation, the resection, just about everything else. We even went to the chemo pill at the very end, which didn't go very well. But in 2014 was when they diagnosed his liver, which came from his stomach. So technically it was still considered stomach cancer that transferred to his liver. And at the very end, it just kind of spread everywhere.
Thank you for sharing that. Sister, do you have a question about caring for him during that time?
Well, before I get to that question about caring, I just want to make sure I understand. So initially, the tumor that was found in his stomach was said to be benign.
Mm-hmm.
And he was getting regular checkups after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if it was
Yeah.
benign, when did it become?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think probably, thinking back, they probably were checking his stomach and the area that they thought, maybe something could grow back. And along the way, missed that things had spread other places because they're really just cells, cells that go bad. And so, I don't know, somewhere along the way, they missed that they spread somewhere else and started multiplying as bad cells.
Wow. So, I mean, one of the questions that I wanted to talk through, and, maybe, I don't know if you want to tell us more about, sort of how your husband transitioned and things like that. But I just want to, in terms of being a caregiver, the feelings that you go through with the grief and of the loss, but then the lift of the burden, if you will, where it's because it's a lot, and we're going to talk about even some of the health challenges that you experienced as well.
Yeah. So in terms of being a caregiver, hats off and kudos to anyone who is a caregiver to someone with an illness. But I know sometimes when you're dealing with the grief, there's all kinds of feelings that come with grief, to include, anger, um, and relief sometimes. As if you're a caregiver that's caregiving, even parents for children, sometimes of course you're devastated that you lost your child. But if you've been caring for a special needs child, there's a sense of that burden that's lifted. And I think back to Ike was a true warrior and a fighter, and he never wanted to be a burden. So even when, it was needed, and he needed support, he would, like be as strong as he could, so he didn't feel like he was a burden, or like that we had to care for him. But at the very end, he did need caregiving, and it was not easy. And even our last trip home from the hospital, we came home with everything that you would see probably like in a nursing facility or an elderly home, like the wheelchair and the bed, the bathroom for the bed, the bedpan, and oxygen tank, and the bathing stuff, and just everything and I was ready to, like, okay, we're gonna do this, like ready for the battle to carry him through. um and a lot of our life was consumed. I will say, for my mother-in-law also, like she was here a lot helping me because it was a lot. And there, I took one last trip right before, literally like the week before, because things happened so fast at the very end. But she was here caring to make sure everything was okay with him. And so when you go through that initial shock and grief after losing your loved one, then there's kind of the sense of like relief and like freedom too, because like, what do you do now? Because your life was so consumed with caring for this loved one, and all of the the stress and the burden that you had to care and keep this person alive, so to speak, um, is now lifted. And in a sense, I like to believe that your loved one is lifted and freed also, because they know, and I know I never wanted to be a burden or feel like a burden to anyone. And I'm not saying that anybody that you're caring for is a burden. He never was. But there is that sense of relief. So and that's normal. That's totally a normal part of the grieving process. So for anyone who may be a caregiver and maybe feeling bad, because you feel bad about it, like, oh God, like, why do I feel like, okay, like like a sense of relief and freedom when, it's horrible because I don't have my loved one. But it's totally a normal part of the grieving process. And it's okay. It's okay. There are lots of, even people get mad at their loved one for leaving them and leaving them in the situations that they left them. And I can honestly say I was never mad at Ike. I've been mad at God. I've been mad at, the random stranger on the street that's living and Ike isn't, like I have been angry at other people, but never him, because I don't feel like he, I just didn't feel that way. But people do get mad at their loved ones for leaving them as a single parent, for leaving them to pick up the pieces, for leaving them to try and figure out how they're going to pay the bills now. That's all comes with it. So be encouraged that, if you are going a caregiver or experiencing loss, that it's all normal. And if you don't have a support group or someone that's been through and can assure you that these feelings are all normal, then I definitely hope that you will seek one. And I have resources if if you need some. I feel
Absolutely.
like I got like all the supports.
Absolutely. Well, sister alluded to it. So in this process, so you're newly married, you new family, you
Mhm.
so even really before you get married, you kind of had this okay, this is benign, but then here we going on, things are moving
Yeah,
forward and you're moving
yeah,
on with life. And so you're managing, you're living,
yeah,
you're managing, working
yeah.
through. Um, and then your head decides to explode. So you tell us about your aneurysm because I think people
Yeah.
it's like, wait a minute, what?
Mhm.
What? How did that come into the story? So tell us
Oh
about
my
your
goodness.
aneurysm and then what that did because you were
Yeah.
still very much in di-
Ike's battle. Yeah.
Ike's battle, yeah.
Yeah. So insane. So it really was just out of nowhere. And I'm working out one day at the gym, and then I boom, hear this pop in my head and stars. I go black, and I'm like, oh man, I really pushed it on that set. My legs, they're like giving out on me. So I just, gather myself, drink some water, finish up, and go. And my head's like pounding now. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? So I just go, it's Valentine's Day on 2018. So I finish up, go get the kids and get home. And we're like, I plan for us to go out to dinner or something. I'm like, yeah, I really need to eat because I'm starving. Because I'm thinking at this point, because my head hasn't stopped pounding, I'm like, I have a hunger headache. Then I'm thinking, like, wait a minute, I've eaten today. I've drunk lots of water. Like, there's no reason I should have this hunger headache. Then I'm like, let's just order in or something because my head is, I just can't. And so we order in, go through eating, get the kids in bed, and then we sit down and we're watching our show and, snuggled on the couch. And I tell them, like, is there like vessels that can pop in your brain or something? At this point, I know, like, I'm not even thinking, I don't know anything about brain aneurysms, anything like that. And I'm like, don't think I'm dumb, but there's vessels in your brain, right? And he's like, yes. And so I tell him what happened. And I, again, super strong. And he always thinks I'm a hypochondriac. So I expected his response to be like, you're fine, do XYZ, everything will be all right. And he goes, do you want me to wake up the kids to take you to the ER? And I was like, no, don't wake up the kids, but I'll go. And then I'll, like, I'll be all right. I'll call you and let you know. And so I go and they do, they just do a, a, a regular CAT scan. And then they're like, okay, you're fine. And I tell them all of these things, which I now know are very much common signs of an aneurysm, a rupturing aneurysm, So, so they're sending me home and I'm like, so the guy who's like, the PA or something is about to send me home. And I'm like, well, did you look at all of my blood vessels? You made sure like none of them popped or anything? He goes, well, we don't see your blood vessels on that type of, on a CT scan. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I said, that's what I'm concerned about. That's why I came here and told you all these things. And he's like, well, we have to do a different one. It's called a CT angio. And I'm like, okay, well, he's like, you want to do it? I'm like, of course. That's why I came here. So they do it. And of course, they find an aneurysm there. And so it quickly went from going home to now they're doing like a spinal tap right away, emergency. And I'm like, oh God. So I call Ike and I'm like, this is what happened. First, I told him, okay, I'm coming back home. And so he's like, all right. And by this time, it's the middle of the night. And he's like, I'm like, don't wake up the kids, just come. We live literally 2 minutes from the hospital. So I'm like, it's okay, just come. And so people don't think we left our kids at home in the middle of the night. We did, but they were okay. So he runs over and then he looks at me. And mind you, he's in the middle of his. So he's like, one of us has to live for these kids. And I'm like, both of us have to live, So he's already thinking like, and so it's at the forefront of our brains, like, oh gosh, what's happening here. So anyway, I get surgery, not that night immediately, because they checked and said there was no blood in my spinal, so I would be okay. So I had to get with neurosurgeon and everything. But that year, or that time frame, it was 2018, and 2019 I would say was one of his worst years, like right after. But so he was still battling during that time. But let me tell you, and I think our bodies and God, and knows, but during my time, like, you would have never known that like, he was so, like, strong and healthy. It was just like, I don't know, miraculously, like, able to pick up and just do for me, because that's what was needed at the time. And of course we had our family and our support system. But yeah, so in the midst of that, and when I think at, like, when I just said angry at other people, and I am someone who, I'm very empathetic, and I love a good, like, overcoming story, and, like, when people, they've won their battle with cancer and things like that, and I get all emotional and I cry because I'm so happy for them. Like, I found myself getting angry, like, why that person, and not Ike. But then I think to my situation and think, like, people could be thinking the same thing. Why? Because so many ruptured aneurysms occur because that person went home and thought it was just a headache and didn't ask the next question. And so I'm blessed to still be here for the kids, and just glad that, and feel ever so grateful that that wasn't my testimony, that we were able to work through it. Now, I do have a stent in my brain now, but totally normal function. Like, I'm still smart, and everything. Like, I'm
I'm still
okay.
smart, just in case y'all don't try me, right?
I'm okay. We made it through. So,
But I
um,
think it's so powerful because I think it's the actress Sharon Stone who had an aneurysm. And I'll never forget this. And this has been several years ago, but she talked about, she's like, if you ever have the worst headache that you've ever had in your life, go have them
mhm,
check you. Don't
mhm,
leave until they know. And so I'm
mhm,
so glad that you asked that additional question, because that's
mhm,
what happens. So many people, they take for what
mhm.
they're being told,
Yep,
and then they walk away, and it was
yep,
like, well, look, I came here, I described
mhm.
all these symptoms to you, and you don't do the test that you needed to do. Come
Yeah,
on, healthcare
yeah.
system.
Exactly. There's such a lack of education around aneurysms too, because those are classic symptoms. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, educating the healthcare system, getting more funding around the testing for it, because it is, you know, there it is hereditary too. So being concerned with your my daughter and my son, I need to make sure that they're getting adequate testing, as
Yeah.
and be aware. There's just so much lack of education around it, and you know, um, there are a lot of ruptured aneurysms. I don't want to misquote the numbers right now, but it's
Well,
not.
I dropped something in the comments here. I dropped
Mhm,
an article from the Cleveland Clinic, and then also I just pulled it from their website about who gets aneurysms.
mhm,
So, I've had my brain checked
mhm,
a few times because I have
mhm.
polycystic kidney disease, and
Yeah.
it's very common in people to have polycystic kidney disease to have brain aneurysms. They don't know why, but it is common. So, I've had an MRI of my brain probably a couple of times thus far in my life, just
Mhm.
monitoring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just monitoring. So
Mhm.
go to the Cleveland Clinic link that we have there, read some of those symptoms. But if you're a woman, it's a risk factor. If
Yes.
you're a
Minorities also are higher
risk
risk
factor,
factors. Mhm,
so that
mhm,
the risk factors are
mhm.
high. So
Yep,
we have some comments here saying, so glad that you insisted on added tests, because if you hadn't, we don't know where this
exactly.
conversation could possibly be. So yes, you are a warrior, a fighter. Both of you all are. Healthcare system can really be a money machine, really have to slow down sometimes and care for the patient instead of just hitting numbers. Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, that's what's so interesting to me. First of all, I just want to fight all these folks because they just I'm annoyed just because they not. You would think that because it is such a money machine that they would have
Would
insisted,
want to run all the tests, right?
right? So that is so insane to me that they did not.
But the
And
ED is to get you in and out as fast as possible. Like the
Mhm.
goals of certain parts of the hospital is different.
True.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it, but this is just wow. Like he said, thank God that you insisted and you took care of yourself and you were your own advocate. Because to your point, many of us would just
Mhm.
take what the doctor said and just said, okay, well, I just have a bad headache. I'll go home. I'll take
Mhm.
some over the counter medicine or
Yep.
something and lie down and,
Mhm. And don't wake up.
and
I
don't wake
cannot
up.
tell you like how many people have reached out since who know someone who, you know, they just suddenly pass because their ruptured brain aneurysm,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think Sharon Stone said she made it, how she made it, but it was 3 days. Like she said,
Mhm.
she was laying there, and then
Mhm.
someone had to like come and get her and then take
Mhm.
her because she was
Mhm.
alone when it happened. But she heard that pop, that
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
what was that sound, and then this
Mhm.
pain, and then it was
Mhm.
like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go sit down, and then it was
Mhm.
like that 3 days before someone came to her home, and so the fact that she even made it,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
look, Ernest, she said, "I'm over here mad at that doctor." Yeah.
Well, I thank you for even mentioning the pop sound because I did not
Mhm.
know that. For I've always heard it's the worst headache you've ever had, and I'm like, well, how do you? I mean, it would take you having that headache to know
Right.
it's
To
the worst
know. Right.
headache that you've ever had. So to know that, maybe there's something else because
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of us have pretty bad headaches,
Yeah.
especially people who suffer from migraines. So again,
Yeah.
you don't know if this is the worst ever or not.
Right. Right.
Um, but so thank you for that information.
Mhm.
So one of the things we talked about, and as I said, I admired about you, it's like you all were living your best life. Like you all were living your best life all the time. And so, you said, I gathered this strength and looked at you and was like, listen, hey, one of us gonna be here. Like, so you all got busy living, and because
Yeah.
you were taking the trips, you were doing the things, and even to the end, even when he was in a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, and you knew the end was drawing near, you all did so much to just keep that family unit
Yeah.
together. Tell us about, how did you like say, no, we're gonna live our best life. I'm going on a trip, I'm going with my line sisters, I'm doing the things,
Yeah.
like we're
Yeah.
living this life.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it was ever like it was never like a discussion, so to speak. I feel like there was just the point of, you know, just the understanding that, like, listen, nothing else matters. I can honestly say, like, after 2018, it was like, seriously, like, we're not sweating the small stuff. Even little disagreements, it's like, who cares? Like, life is so much bigger. Really, trying to be present in the moment and really just living all that we can for our kids and for us, really just really eye opening that life can is here and then can be gone, and we're so very grateful that we have what we have right now in this moment, and nothing else really matters, like literally nothing. So um truly just enjoy what you have, and enjoy it to the fullest, because there will be that moment when it's completely different
Mhm.
and you don't know what or when or where, but it's that defining moment of, this was life before and this is life after.
Mhm. So tell us about the kids. You have two beautiful children who are learning who yeah, tell us about the kids. I don't know. They're
Well,
absolutely gorgeous children
they are.
and
They're amazing.
bright and
Yeah,
yeah.
they're amazing. They are now 13 and 11. Amaya is our oldest. She's 13, and Jesus help us all who have teenage girls. Sorry, Demetria, I know you know. Oh, but and add the added layer of grief and trauma on top of it. Oh my gosh, send help fast. Okay, anyway,
Mhm,
but she's still an amazing human.
mhm,
Amaya's 13, Isiah is 11, and they're both, super smart, super amazing. Let me tell you, their resilience is like no other. They have struggled a lot this past year, but and part of this parenting journey, as now a single mom, a widow, has been very, very difficult. And I think part of it is because I feel like as a parent, you want to do everything to make your kids better, and you want to make sure that they are okay, and you want to protect them as much as you can. And unfortunately, I can't. Like,
mhm,
and the reality of that is hurts so
mhm,
much. That's probably, one of the biggest pains now, because either they don't want to hurt you anymore, and they know how much you hurt. So they are doing everything they can to not put more of a burden or more hurt and more pain on you. And that is like not a good feeling when you feel like your kids are trying to like have to push things down and not get their feelings out because they don't want to hurt you.
mhm,
So, I definitely have them in support groups and therapy and things like that, because they need support and they need to have an outlet. Um, and I think, I don't know if I don't think I've shared yet that they did not know any of this, any of the battles and that goes on to living our best life too. We just wanted our kids to have the best life without having to, worry about what it means that daddy has cancer, or that they didn't know I had the aneurysm. They knew that I had to go to the hospital because I had the surgery, and they knew our family came from out of town, but they had no clue what happened. And they didn't know that Ike had cancer until literally like the last days, until we could not tell them anymore. And actually, I don't even know if I would have told them specifically that if they didn't absolutely ask, because they're so freaking smart. Let me tell you, I felt like I was sitting in a doctor's office when I had to sit them down, which was one of the worst days ever. Also had to sit them down and tell them like condition of daddy, and he was at the hospital at this point. And the medical questions that they asked me, I was blown away. Prognosis, and like what's the percentage of people that pull through on this, and like what exactly is happening, how did it happen, when, how long, like I'm like, good God. So yeah, like I said, I don't even know if I probably would have been so clear if they didn't push me to be so clear and
mhm,
forthcoming. But they didn't know anything until the very end. And I think I feel, like it was the constant back and forth as to whether we would tell them or not. Ike never wanted anyone to feel sorry for him, never wanted anyone to think any less of him. So to them, they were his strong, and he struggled years, up and down. He had his up and downs when he was going through treatment. He had up and downs, and they saw him sick and everything, and they just thought, they thought Amaya is lactose intolerant, and she would just always talk about, oh, daddy has the same stomach issues I have, lactose intolerance.
mhm,
And then he had a lot of referred pain, and in his shoulders and stuff. And so he would always, and so my son just, oh, daddy's shoulders are hurting him again, And so they never knew or had to worry about losing him to cancer. They always saw him get sick and then get strong again. And so even at the end, they just, thought, okay, daddy will get strong again and come out again.
mhm.
So,
We got some comments here. Lakeisha says she signed in late, but she has two school friends who passed away from brain aneurysm, so she definitely has to rewatch.
yeah.
Um, Tita says, yes, being present in the moment is not a cliche. It is so true to master that. Even though the darkest times, it can help you breathe and not get too overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
We have also Amaya and her 240 questions. But I think, I think oftentimes children are very bright and very intuitive, and they know a lot more than we
Mm-hmm.
give them credit for, because they're taking in information that we don't even know where
Yeah.
they're taking it in from.
Yep. Yep.
So to know, and knowing the little bit of them that I do, I'm not surprised that they probably didn't pull out a medical encyclopedia and start like asking
Oh yeah.
questions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, sister, do you have a question?
I had a comment as well as a question. The comment that I was making to Amanda earlier was our father lost his mother at the age of 12, and that, it wasn't until I was much older that I started to recognize, what that meant, or how much that really impacted him. Because
Mm-hmm.
of course,
Mm-hmm.
this is
Mm-hmm.
my parent, so you
Mm-hmm.
don't ever really think about your parents in the context of being children until
Mm-hmm.
you're older,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And so, but his position on it, we've heard more now that he's getting older, um, and I think his own mortality is a part of the conversation. But his position has always been, but if that hadn't happened, the other things wouldn't have happened. Ultimately, he wouldn't have met our mother, and we wouldn't be here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I just wanted to ask, first, sort of how do you see these series of things, and how does your faith play into that?
Yeah.
And then the other piece, because children, we often think, as people of color, as Black people, we often feel like we're just super resilient. But
Mm-hmm.
you have them going to counseling and in
Mm-hmm.
groups. How do you protect them from all of the other things that can continue to trigger that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So faith definitely a big part of our healing process, and I think where I am today, I honestly feel probably the way your dad feels. Like if this didn't happen, and I think about a lot of things have happened in my life, and I've had a lot of experiences from being a child, and if those things didn't happen, I wouldn't be the amazing human that I am. I am truly grateful for my experiences, as terrible as they are. Some of them are, because I have great experiences too. I think it really molds and shapes and really is where you're supposed to be. And I am a firm believer that all things are working for our good. And God is already there, and we're truly, I mean, it's His plan. We're truly just living it out. I'm really just a vessel to His goodness and grace. That's what my testimony is, and that's what it is. As much as I am like, why, God, why did it have to be this? I may not see what the good in is it in I might not see the good in it right now, but I know that it's working for my good. And it's so funny because I say that, and then my best friend, who's my line sister, she recently asked me, and I thought it was so interesting. She's like, okay, I know all of, everything works together for your good. Even Ike's death, kind of like like
Mhm.
even including this, because it's like the worst thing ever. And I'm like, yeah, there's no exclusions.
Mm.
Yes,
Wow.
even that, there are no exclusions. Um, so, and I'm a firm believer in that. And I, you know, we will continue to honor his legacy and make sure that that doesn't die. And I know he is still with us. There are so many signs, but you know the loss is great. The physical loss is great and will never be replaced. But I know he's still with us and will continue to do great things to honor him. And so, um, that plays a big role, and I appreciate my experiences. I really, really do. Um, and then you asked about the kids. Oh, and how I protect them. So honestly, I try and not, by protecting them, I try and allow them to not be triggered, but not try and hide away from the triggers and let them go through, because the grief is going to come, the triggers are going to come, and let them know that it's safe and it's okay to experience those things. And it's not abnormal, and it's all part of our process. I feel like that's the best thing that I can do to protect them, to let them know that they're safe, um, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that they're okay. And I think that's the best thing I can do. Um, yeah. And I don't, because it's so hard to know what those triggers will be. It can really be anything. Like you know, the the most random thing, and I'm like, just a mess. So if I tried to, like, I you never you probably will never be able to. So
Mhm.
We got some comments here. One says, "Amen, girl." Another one, it says, "I agree. Everything prepares you for the next chapter in life. The Lord is good, and His mercies endureth." And another says, "His plan is greater than all our comprehension."
yeah.
And so, yeah. Well, I wanted to. So I'm looking at you, fly, beautiful woman, and like this ain't what widowhood's supposed to look like, right? Uh
Tell me about it.
so I would love to hear, if you could share with us about some of the support groups that you were able to find and really connect, because there are, what we think of the face of widowhood, we're usually thinking uh old gray haired, but it looks different. I mean, the average age of a widow in this country is 54.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
so if that's the
Yeah.
average, that tells you there's a
Yeah.
whole lot younger and
Mhm.
some old. So if we're at 54 is in the
Yeah.
middle,
Yeah.
there's a lot of young widows out there. So tell us
Yeah.
about the support group and the help that you've received.
Yeah. So I um have, in just seeking out resources for my kids, I stumbled upon Modern Widows Club here in, it's actually nationwide, but was actually founded here in Orlando. So we have a pretty strong Modern Widows Club here, and that has been very helpful to me. And there are some that look like me, or if they don't, their experience may have been, like you said, average age 54, so when they were a little bit younger, and so they have that experience and have gone before me, and so being able to tap in and connect with them is very helpful. I also have, the support group that my kids are in. They're in a grief support group, and obviously it's for kids. So New Hope for Kids, they're amazing. They're here local, and they have, obviously, if they're kids there, the kids have parents or grandparents that are raising them. So we have a separate parenting support group for the kids that are grieving. So there, I've been able to connect with a couple of young, like my age, widows that have lost their spouses, and I recently come across one that's actually, our kids are the same age, 11 and 13, and so it's very helpful to be able to connect with individuals that know exactly what you're going through, and just to support one another. I also have my own individual therapist, aside from the support groups, and I physical therapy, or physical activity, has been a godsend for me. I've always been pretty active, but I really honed in on my health and wellness, because it's so, so important. And again, I have to live for these kids, like, I mean, for me too, but more importantly for them. And so I run a lot, and that is so cleansing for me. Like I cry a lot on my runs, one, because life is so beautiful, nature is so beautiful, and then it just has me thinking. And I think I mentioned the signs. I promise on my runs, I get so many signs, and I know Ike is like running with me, and so it's good for me, the physical, being able to focus on my health and things like that. So yeah, a few support groups, therapy, and of course, my village. Like what I would do without them, I don't know, but I have my sorority sisters, my sister girlfriends, my family friends, Ike's fraternity brothers. They're all still very supportive and active, and have really carried us through. And I hope that they continue, because you hear me, everybody, like continue to carry us through, because we still need help.
Yeah. Well, I saw Jody put here, I call them waves. They come out of nowhere. So you
Yes,
have these
yes.
waves.
Hmm.
I dropped them in the link. So if you need help or know someone, the modern widows club.org,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
also new hope for kids.org.
Hmm.
So those are resources that Amanda has found helpful here locally,
Hmm.
in the Orlando area. But I'm sure that if you reach out to them, they will be able to connect you in your community to a similar resource, because
Hmm.
sometimes we just don't know where to look or where to go.
Yeah.
And so usually if we, get one place, they can help, tap us into the right place.
Yep.
Um, Another comment here, that is such a blessing. Community is so important, and
Hmm. Hmm.
community is,
Yep.
without having community, I mean, we are communal beings, as human
Yes.
beings. So
Yes.
without community, where would we be?
Yep.
So you are writing a book,
Hmm.
and it will be published this summer.
Yep.
So coming to you this summer is SOAR. And so
Yes.
SOAR is an acronym. It stands for Strength, Overcoming, Acceptance, and Resilience. Tell us
Mhm.
a little bit about what we can expect in your um debut as an author. Uh,
Pretty much from the beginning to now, it's a memoir on my life, and so, and it goes through like trauma and ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, resilience, grace, vulnerability, the grief and loss, all of it all in one. So it'll dive a little bit deeper into what we talked about today, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
yeah, because even before you met Ike, you had a whole
Life.
life.
Yep.
Yeah. It
Yep.
had a whole life. And
Yep.
so, I mean, you're demonstrating soaring to us now. And I know on, like I said, this past Friday marked the first anniversary of his transition, and I saw you
Mhm.
all releasing your angels out there, and then
Mhm.
I saw you had to put the caveat for the trolls out there. These are biodegradable angels, so don't even come for me, right? And I laughed to myself. Uh, but you started a foundation, so the Be Like Ike Foundation. Tell us
Mhm.
about the foundation and how you want to continue his legacy.
So the foundation, Ike was a coach, an educator, a mentor. And so our foundation is supporting students, student athletes, coaches, educators through support, college funding. There's a focus on health and wellness, because, it's important for us to have mind, body, spirit, physical, wellness. So we have a health and wellness component that will be educating regarding everything wellness. And we are actually doing a kickoff celebration next Friday, not next Friday, the Friday after next Friday, the 17th. And we'll be giving our first college scholarship and coaches scholarship. I'm just have a heart for, coaches and educators. They give out so much, their family, I mean, they give financially, emotionally. I mean, they give, give, give. And so we definitely want to support them, to continue to support them. Last December at the All Star, the Orlando Sports Foundation, which is a foundation that gives back to battling cancer, specifically breast cancer, but all cancers. They actually gave an award, a scholarship to a teacher in Ike's name. And so after that, I was like, there's no reason we can't continue to do this, continue to support the teachers, the coaches. And so I was like, let's keep doing it. And I, was like, is it crazy to want to start a foundation? Do you think it's possible? And so here we are. We're starting, we're going, and I'm excited. I got, the kids, everything, is really centered around them and the lasting legacy. So they're all on board and they're excited, and it's really about, them. And, I foresee them continuing forever, and it just kind of growing from here. So we're excited. The Be Like Ike Foundation, and that mantra, the Be Like Ike mantra, really, I'm so grateful to the author, I guess. I know they're not called authors, they're called something else, but they wrote a news article in the very beginning, and it was like, Be Like Ike. And so it just kind of stuck. And ever since then, it's been like our little mantra. And I'm like, well, and I was struggling, like, what do we call the foundation? And it just kind of naturally was like, Be Like Ike. That's what it's all about. And so our values are centered around what he was all about, being brave and bold and engaging and empowering and kind and loyal, all of those things.
Absolutely. So everybody out here, so if you are watching this live or watching this in a replay, go to Be Like IkeFoundation.org. It's ticking across the bottom here. Make a contribution. Contribute, because we all know that yeah, there are the big foundations out there, the big 501(c)(3)s that do great work. But it's these small ones that really touch lives in a way that, they're boots on the ground, and they can
Yeah.
immediately have so much impact in people who you see and touch every day,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Can I
Be
just
Like
say,
Out Foundation.org. Go ahead. No donation is too large or too small. Okay.
wanted to also say, like, since you said that, mentioned, like, doing boots on the ground for our first thing that we wanted to do too, aside from the scholarships, we're collecting like toilet donations for the Hope Lodge, which is at Moffitt Cancer Center. And it's where families can stay, kind of like the Ronald McDonald House, where families stay when they're undergoing, surgery or something. If you're getting treatment at Moffitt, then you can stay at the Hope Lodge, and families stay there. So we got their wish list. And so we're accepting some of those donations off their wish list so we can go take it to them. So that weekend, our family will travel to Tampa and go drop it off to the families there at the Hope Lodge. So,
Okay. All right. Well, you all make sure you go like, follow, share, subscribe, share this episode with as many people as possible. And if you tell them, just go to the end, but you need to do the Be Like Ike Foundation.org. People respond to text messages really fast. So just text 5 friends and say, hey, give $5 to this foundation, because every dollar adds up and it makes a difference. So that's my sales pitch, and I'm gonna
thank
wrap
you.
there. But I'm gonna keep the ticker going on the bottom. Sister, what would you like to say as we get prepared to close out tonight? I know Amanda tangentially through me, but this is probably like the most you really actually heard her story, and the
Mhm.
story of her family and her love story and her loss story. What do you want to say in closing or share with Amanda and anybody who's watching?
Well, first, thank you. Again, I think so. Congratulations on your book. I wanted to talk
Thank
about it a
you.
little bit more, I'm sure, but this time it passed so quickly. Hopefully, it's been a cathartic experience for you in writing it,
Definitely.
and I'm sure it
Definitely.
is going to definitely help a lot of people out and be a benefit to a lot of people,
Yeah,
and particularly.
Angelia says that. Congratulations. Can't wait to read it. The book will help a lot of people. Yes.
and,
That's cool.
and similarly, I would say the same as far as your foundation, the Be Like Ike Foundation. You know, I was recently having a conversation with one of my line sisters, and because I don't have children, and so we were talking about legacy and leaving a legacy. And I was saying, you know, the work that I do in terms of writing the documentary that I'm working on, I see that as a part of me leaving a legacy since
Absolutely.
I don't have children. And it
Absolutely.
was interesting because she does have children, and she said, you know, I don't think we should necessarily see our kids as our legacy, because our kids, they don't necessarily want to do the things we want to do, and they don't necessarily have the same beliefs that we have. But to be able to create something you know, tangible in the sense of a book,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
in the sense of the Be Like Ike Foundation, that
Mhm.
your children can carry on for decades and
Mhm.
generations to come. That
Mhm.
is absolutely leaving a true legacy, and ensuring that who your husband is
Mhm.
continues to be known, to others who may not have met him while he was in the physical form on
Right.
this earth. So
Right.
thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
for allowing me to share.
Yeah. Well, what do
Absolutely.
you want to say to folks in closing, Amanda, about everything? I mean, you
Oh.
touched on so much this evening. I mean, just so beautiful. What was, if you wanted to give people one or two key takeaways from tonight, what would you want it to be?
um, whew. I think one of the big things for me is um, that God is already there. So, you know, and I think I worry a lot about a lot of things, and nothing surprises him. So, and if you don't believe in God, then whatever your higher power is, then um, I think relate to your higher power, and I think that that definitely helps me. And then for those who have lost, they're still with you. And we didn't really get to touch on many of the signs, but oh my God, I see signs all the time. And I'm just like, okay, all right, hey, dear. Like, one
Tell
time,
us one. Tell us one.
one's a good one. Okay.
Mhm.
One is, well, first, I have to preface it by saying this. Where we buried Ike is right by our house. It's at the cemetery in Claremont, and our our funeral home is in Orlando, right? So they usually do Orlando funerals, and they have doves that they release at the funeral, at funerals. And so they told us, oh, we'll release a dove. But then when they realized we're going to be in Claremont, they're like, oh, our doves can't go to Claremont, like they won't find their way back. I'm like, who knew they had to find their way back? I thought you just released them. So that was something new to me. I'm like, oh no. So my line sister was trying so hard to get it, because I was like, that would be so beautiful, to release the white dove. Okay. So we didn't get the white dove, and it was like, okay, whatever. I want to say like 5 month, either 5 month or 6 month anniversary of his passing. The kids and I were out for the weekend. We come home. There's this beautiful white dove on our porch, and I'm like, oh my God. And so we walk up, and usually we don't even see the porch because we pull right into the garage. So we're like, oh my God, beautiful white dove. And then so we go up to it, and then it just like stands there, and then it goes into the bushes and then just watches us, and it's just like there. Like, oh my gosh. And my son's like, I wonder what the meaning of a white dove is. And I'm like, I know, Lovey. I was like, look it up. And I was like, and he's like, I think it's dad. It's definitely daddy. And we're like, yeah, it's daddy. So then he doesn't even leave. He just like chills there. And we go in, and we're like, oh my gosh, So then we go in, and then later my son goes out. He's like, I'm just gonna go check and see if it's there. And then he comes back, and he's like, the dove left a white feather so that we know he's always here. And then so we have the little white feather on our thing. So that is one. It's like you just know that. And I'm like, this, he did not even leave. He's like, hey guys, hi, I'm here, So it was really beautiful. And the fact that they were like, what do white doves mean? And then so we talked about, what white doves mean, and they were like, wow, So yeah. So those signs all the time.
Oh my. Okay. Got me choked up a little bit here. Well, you did one thing. You were breathing before you start talking. So just take a deep, deep breath. A couple comments here. A beautiful testimony, Amanda. Amanda, continue blessings to you and family on your amazing journey.
Thank you.
And then thanks you, Amanda, for the courage to share your story.
Thank you.
Another comment, thank you for sharing, so inspirational. And another comment, literally the same thing happened in a passing in our family. They
Aw,
do come back to us.
you
So
do, for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Well, in closing, I want to say, everyone, first, thank you, Amanda, for your
Thank you.
transparency, for your vulnerability. We made it through without needing a
Woo!
Kleenex. Woohoo!
We got it on deck.
Yeah.
You know that last story was about to get me, but I was like, nope, we made it to the end.
Yeah, just had to keep on breathing, right? But thank you for sharing, because I know that this will have a huge, huge impact on people. And you said something earlier, like everyone is having certain levels of trauma that they're dealing with. I y'all know I like Kendrick Lamar's new album. The first song on it is called United in Grief. And he, you know, we're all grieving right now. Like these last couple years, I don't think we should not take for granted the impact of
Yes.
these last 2 years.
Yes.
And then the just these repeated trauma on trauma on trauma on trauma, where we're witnessing and we experience tangentially, but it doesn't matter because our brain is still like a
Yep.
feeling like we're being beat up. So for you to come on and share and show the resilience, show the vulnerability of what getting help and support, show such authentic love that you all shared, I think is going to touch and help so many people. So thank you for sharing it here with us first. Can't wait for the book to come out so we can come have you back on to promote it and sell it and continue to amplify, because I know that this is going to make a difference in the lives of many. So thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the platform. You all are amazing. I love you, sisters.
Mwah! We love you
You.
too,
Thank
sister.
you.
So y'all hold the line and let's wave good night to everybody. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning
Bye.
in.
Thank you.